Big news out of fall camp thus far. Not big news in terms of a surprise, but just that we finally got Graham Mertz announced as a starting quarterback for the Florida Gators a couple of days ago. Again, no surprise, but Nick Silk, any final thoughts before we hit off Mertz Mania here?
I think what ultimately did it was just Graham kind of becoming more familiar with the playbook, processing faster, his experience, obviously. I have seen him hitting those short intermediate passes. Everyone that I talk to says he's a guy that is going to get you really high football IQ, going to get you in and out of the right plays. And the team has taken to him. I mean, for the past 2 months, guys have been talking about Graham Mertz being a leader, things like that. So I guess it was breaking news, but not really breaking news because it was kind of expected at this point.
Right. Yeah, just been waiting on it to be announced. We've already been hearing, behind the scenes that it was Mertz and then everybody else. Um, we talk QB2 a little bit here, but just ready to see what it all is. He got the number 15 on. He got the nod. I'm hearing some good things, like Nick said, with the intermediate throws and the leadership and getting us in and out of bad plays. So just excited to see what it looks like this fall. It's been a lot of takes about the quarterback position all off season. And then as we get closer to camp, you start seeing the fans turn into fans and giving some hope. And the vibe start changing a little bit. That's why I didn't waste my time in April and May crying, because fans are gonna be fans, and we'll adjust when the games get ready to get played and be a little bit more rational and patient. Once the bullets start flying, we'll see what it is. But right now, the vibes is good when it pertains to quarterback. We just in wait and see mode.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we expected it. We thought that Graham Mertz was going to be the starter when he came to Florida. Obviously, a guy that had a bit of a rocky career at Wisconsin, highly talented guy coming out of high school. But again, Florida brought him in to be a starting quarterback. They needed a starting quarterback, and either he was going to be the starter or he was going to push Jack Miller or Max Brown to be that starter. So he wins that spot. Also gets the aux cord in the locker room. Nick pre-show was a little bit surprised that a guy from Overland Park, Kansas, right outside of Kansas City, spent some time in Wisconsin, was given the aux cord. Nick, what do you think he's playing? Is it a little baby, or is he putting on Morgan Wallen?
I don't know. I mean, who am I to speak on people's music? I played a sea shanty as my song of the week one time. Just surprised me. Maybe Graham's like that. I just didn't think that
he got the dance moves. I seen him and Pearsall get off on the clips a little bit, so he got some sauce. He know how to swag a little bit.
I just didn't think a kid from Kansas who spent 4 years at Wisconsin would come down to the University of Florida and be the DJ. So color me surprised.
I wasn't surprised after I seen the dance moves with him and Pearsall, bro. I was like, all right, he got a little rhythm. You feel me? He might know what he's doing a little bit. As far as what he listening to, probably who's Midwest? Who's jumping in the Midwest rapper wise? Nobody.
Well, I mean, you have Chicago there in the Midwest.
A little Keith.
I'm looking up famous Midwestern rappers. Twista, maybe.
That's old
common.
For him. Twist is old.
Yeah,
for him.
Lupe Fiasco. These are all old names that I'm going through that I know. Old. Nelly's from the other side. Kansas City's split Missouri and Kansas.
Showing your age, bro.
St. Louis. Maybe he's throwing some Nelly on. Do you want to go and take a ride with me?
All right, Dan.
No? All right. So anyway, Graham Mertz got the aux cord, hopefully not playing Nelly, Common, and Lupe Fiasco, but who knows? So that's the big news.
Dirk. I think he got some little Dirk going.
Say what?
Some little Dirk.
Little Dirk, okay.
Vibes. Yeah. That's what the kids are jamming.
Well, Graham, we know you listen to this podcast. Just let us know what you're throwing on the aux cord there. Let's see. Let's get into the other piece of big news that came out of camp. Unfortunately, expected starter defensive end Justice Boone, who I think we are all very, very excited about to be on the opposite side of Prince William McMillan, does go out for the year with an ACL injury. Tough break for the Gators. Nick, let's talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk a little bit about that replacement of that position.
Yeah. So there was like a little debate on it. So the defensive ends and the I think they're calling them F, the edge rushers, are both getting coached by Mike Peterson this year. So there was some debate on whether Boone was a defensive end or, that Jack linebacker. I think he could have played both. Not a starter, but kind of a starter, depending on Princely and depending on what kind of formation you're in. But certainly a kid that had worked his butt off even before he was playing last year. Someone who had already gotten the ear of the locker room, demanded respect, commanded respect, had turned himself into a leader. So tough break, especially happening, just celebrating running off the field in a scrimmage, not even getting to play a game. So I think trying to fill that role, immediately Tyreek Sapp moved from Sean Spencer's group yesterday into Mike Peterson's group. So Tyreek Sapp was an edge rusher in high school. They got him to Florida and they're like, hey, you need to play defensive tackle. And he's put on like 40 pounds. And now they're like, hey, man, by the way, for your fourth year, after putting all that weight, we need you to go back outside. So I don't know if he'll stay at that 270 or try to drop a little bit of weight, but Tyreek Sapp will probably be the first guy that gets that look. And then you start looking at some younger guys, Kelby Collins, TJ Searcy, and Jack Pyburn.
Yeah, no, Jack Pyburn. The hive is heavy right now for Jack Pyburn, especially from the folks in Jacksonville that are eagerly awaiting his arrival. Heard some good things out of camp, out of him. So your thoughts on Justice Boone?
It's more of the same. I want to regurgitate a lot what Nick said. A guy that we was going to count on to make some plays this fall. But we're deep in the trenches. I'm high on that front seven altogether. So just hearing the guys like Pyburn, hearing he had a great scrimmage and put up some numbers. I'm very high on Tyreek Sapp as well. I thought he was more suited just from his frame wise, more suited at defensive end regardless. Didn't really couldn't fill out the whole defensive tackle vibe. So him moving back outside, very high on Kelby Collins. So a young boy that got on campus in early as far as and got to play some spring ball. So he has some experience under him as far as getting himself ready and playing against college bodies and offensive linemen. So I'm not down at the position at all. I think we got a lot of good players at that position that we can rotate and not lose a lot of production. Just unfortunate for Justice Boone. We'll see what he look like when he get back. But I'm still optimistic at the position and also my front seven.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it definitely hurts the depth. One of the things I've been talking about is just how many snaps some of these defensive tackles had to play last year, just how many snaps Princely had to play last year, and that you were getting to a point where you could rotate guys and keep those defensive linemen fresh throughout the course of a game. And this hurts that depth because this is a guy who would have played a ton of snaps for Florida.
Yeah, last season played all 13 games as a redshirt freshman, 24 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and 1.5 sacks. So unfortunate for the Gators. Certainly we wish him a quick recovery, a healthy recovery. It's sad when it's a non-contact injury celebration post-play type of situation. But again, we wish you the best of luck, Justice, and hope that you can come back next year, and re-earn that spot and re-earn those snaps. But like you guys said, there is a lot of depth there. Tyreek Sapp is the name that a lot of fans are clamoring for. Kelby Collins is a guy that obviously you recruited, beat out Alabama, beat out a number of other big schools. As a freshman, you're still going to have those mistakes there. Thought Boone would have been, that nice depth piece. Again, Florida just has this situation where they have a lot of really young, talented players that have been infused in the program over the last year or two, but you need those third, fourth, and fifth year guys to be able to take a majority of those snaps when they can. And so it's an unfortunate situation, but certainly we lift our prayers up to Justice Boone and hope that he has a healthy recovery, and looking forward to having him back for next season. Nick, want to talk, we're going to go a little bit out of sync here. Just deal with it. If you listen to this program, we don't follow a traditional order. Jack Pyburn, a guy that a lot of fans are excited about as well. Kind of came on late last year, played some time on special teams and everything else, but a lot of excitement out of him. What do you think his role might be in replacing?
Yeah, he kind of like a spark plug on special teams last year. sophomore from your favorite county in the state, and was like an elite wrestler. So when you talk about a wrestler on the offensive or defensive line, those are guys that understand leverages, and obviously hard workers. So I think Jack's got a ton of potential. He showed it a little bit. He had a bunch of sacks, or I think 2-3 sacks in the scrimmage, and he's a guy who I think will play, behind Princely. Certainly be back on special teams. You're going to need somebody to step up, whether it's one of the freshmen, whether it's Jack Pyburn, you're going to need somebody. And Pyburn has, the experience of playing 8 games last year.
Perfect. Well, let's get into fall practice updates for another week behind us, including a scrimmage that they had just a few days ago. But before we do that, let's give a shout out to our friends over at the Gatorverse. Go visit thegatorverse.io. You can get a Trevor Etienne signed card there. There's discounts when you come to Gainesville as well, both at restaurants and Airbnb type situations as well. So go visit them, Gatorverse.io. You can support dozens of Florida Gator athletes with your subscription to the Gatorverse. So again, that's GATA verse, VERSE.io. So Gatorverse.io. Go support student athletes. It is the newest way to support University of Florida athletes. So again, Gatorverse.io. Nick, why don't you go ahead and give us a rundown of the past week? We'll get into some injuries. We'll get into some specifics, but from your time out there, over the last 7 days, what have you noticed about the team?
I think the biggest thing that we see when we go out there is just kind of, and I don't know if it's just handling the load that some guys have and trying to keep them healthy, but just seeing guys jump in and out of those non-contact jerseys, and I don't know if it's a cause for concern, but like when I walked out to practice and I see Micah Mazuka still non-contact even though he was going through some stuff, and then Richie Leonard is in a non-contact off to the side working, and I'm like, okay, well that's your 2 starting guards, that's not good. And then both of them come back. So I think it's just load management. Pause. But that's one thing. Like guys have been going down, whether it's just for a day or two. I think Florida doesn't have the depth to withstand a lot of injuries, specifically on the offensive line. I think at tackle right now, you're looking at Damian, Barber, and then Lindell Hudson from FIU is really the third tackle that you feel comfortable with right now. So to me, you got to keep these guys healthy. I think that's the biggest thing. The other one is, and I wrote about it, I think yesterday, the freshman receivers are ready. And I don't know, I think Ricky obviously is proven. I think Caleb Douglas will make a name for himself this year. There's some guys like Jaquavion Frazier's. This is the year of like put up or shut up. You got to start producing. If not, then like Ada Mizell, Trey Wilson, and Andy Jean are going to be coming to get some reps, to get some starts. I really like the progression of those guys. So I think those are the biggest things. And then Arlis Boardingham. I mean, I keep talking about him. You got to figure out a way to get the ball in his hands.
I love it. Let's go position by position here. Let's just talk offense. We'll do a bigger breakdown of the offensive line and defensive tackles on today's show. But Nick, let's talk a little bit about quarterback. Obviously, Graham Mertz, we've talked about, is the named starter. Jack Miller out. Looks like he was doing some backpedaling sleds on the picture that was posted. Any cause for concern other than a broken heart of Jack Miller?
The way that Billy's labeling injuries now, upper body, lower body, it was
love it.
Upper body parentheses broken heart. No, Florida told us after last night before media that it was just to rest his arm from throwing. So not expected to be anything serious there. And I think we touched on it last week. I wonder what the quarterback situation would be if, knock on wood, Graham Mertz were to get hurt in the first quarter against Utah. Who would you go to versus, hey, we need a little spark and Max Brown can give you something with his legs. So quarterback, no controversy there. It's going to be Graham Mertz as long as he's healthy.
Silk, what are your thoughts? You think Max Brown, Jack Miller, what are your What's your take there?
My take's still the same. I just think Max Brown. If we're going to, like, it just depends on the game and the situations, like we said before.
Mm,
If it's Utah and Graham was to go down, I would think it would probably be Jack Miller, just from
mm,
a inexperienced standpoint with Max Brown. But as far as ceiling, I think he provided a higher ceiling in his capability to lead the pocket and do some things with his legs. Just want to harp on a little bit more what he was saying with the receivers. Those young
mm,
boys just have the ability. They're saying that Graham is doing very good with intermediate throws. These guys
mhm,
have the ability to catch an immediate throw and intermediate throw and turn it into a big game with their speed of Eugene Wilson and Andy Mazzell. So that's going to be the difference. I do like Douglas' speed, but some of the other guys aren't like Jaquavion Frazier's, aren't burners. They're more possession receivers. So those young boys just provide some upside with catching an intermediate pass and being able to make guys miss and take it to the crib. And I seen in just the clips or the highlights that the football Twitter put out, Mizzell scoring some touchdowns,
mhm.
and then look like he's just catching the ball and not running guys. So that's going to be the biggest difference with the young boys at receiver.
Yeah. I know Eugene Wilson, just to move to wide receivers, was named to ESPN's top 50 newcomers list. So that's certainly a good honor to have for him. And the expectations are going to be high there. Nick, let's move to wide receiver, then we'll go back to running back. Obviously, every fan is excited about the speed and the quality of the new guys that are coming in. Obviously, Ricky Pearsall, Caleb Douglas are names that everybody knows. Is there any other names that have stuck out or not stuck out this year in camp so far?
I think I've been really impressed with Caleb Douglas. Obviously, a kid that played quarterback for most of his high school career, switched to receiver late. He was still learning the position. I think you'll see a jump as he gets more comfortable, not only with being a receiver, but the speed of the game, things like that. Ricky Pearsall. And then I'm looking for a third receiver. I think right now that's probably Marcus Burke.
Okay.
But other than that, I think I really see an opportunity for the freshmen to get some time. You've got Ty Bowman, Khalil Jackson's a guy that they're really high on, and then outside of that, it's the young guys.
What do you think the order is of the young guys? Do you think there is of who would see the field first? Obviously, there's going to be, right? But do you think that list has started to make itself known yet, or not yet?
I don't know that it is yet.
Okay.
And that could be a week to week thing, especially when you're talking about younger players. It might just be who had a good week of practice and knew the install for that week.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about freshmen, some of them just it takes longer to click. These guys have all the physical talent in the world, but you can't replicate, game speed in a game day environment. So that'll be something they have to experience for themselves.
Who would you, and obviously we're not there, but who would you guys have as wide receiver number one of the freshmen? Just a
I
little
don't.
pontificating.
Yeah, I don't have enough information to be honest with you, but I think they all bring something different to the table. I think Eugene Wilson needs some work on his route running. He's explosive, but I think there's some things he can clean up in his route running. And
Mm,
Andy Jean is a more polished route runner. Top end speed, it could go either Mazzell or Eugene Wilson. I think they all bring something different to the table, but uh, Mazzell has top end speed, but he's a better route runner than Eugene. So I just think it
mm,
just depends on what the offense is trying to do. If you're trying to do a jet sweep or throw a bubble screen, that could be a play you want to get to Andy Mazzell or Eugene Wilson. But if it's a post corner, and that may be something that Andy Jean could set up and do. I just think they bring something different to the table, and it's just a crapshoot. I don't know if there's a particular pecking order between the
yeah.
three. If I
And
had
I
to
know
vote
that
who
they're
get the most touches, I would think Eugene Wilson gets the most touches this fall if I had to pick one.
I like that. I know that they play different positions. Appreciate you pointing that out, Harrison. Just more so, just on the field. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a pecking order just yet, but I think, and then if we're talking overall touches, I think you'll see Eugene Wilson on special teams.
Mm,
So if we're not just talking receptions, I think Aiden Mizell's probably made more plays than the other two, but I think I like Andy Jean from just an overall standpoint right now. Obviously, Mizell has elite speed. I think I like Jean, and then I mean, if Ricky, like I've said it a bunch of times, if Ricky had gone to the NFL, I think Trey Wilson would be starting it in the slot at some point, sooner rather than later.
Do you think we see? I know Khalil Jackson got put on scholarship again this year. Do you think we see him play much at wide receiver this year? I know he played a lot of special teams last year. Played up in some mop-up time into the game type of stuff. But do you think we'll see him much on the field this year?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of guys outside of the three freshmen. You
Right.
know, when you run down the list, it's who's going to get those reps. Is it Marcus Burke? Is it Khalil Jackson? There's really, and then Jaquavion Frazier. I think there's three guys for that other outside spot. Across from Caleb Douglas. So I think you'll see a lot of those guys, and they'll rotate. They'll have a healthy rotation, and you'll see all three freshmen getting in, and then you'll see Frazier's, Jackson, and Burke as well.
I know that Keith Niebuhr brought this up, and it's both a good sign. It's a double-edged sword here, right? It's great that Florida has three young freshman studs at wide receiver that seem to be transitioning to fall camp really, really well. The double-edged sword there is that you don't have a lot of juniors, seniors, and upperclassmen, level talent that are taking those reps. But is this the most excited you've been about a wide receiving group of freshmen? Keith brought up that Florida really hasn't had a group contribute as freshmen since, I think, going back, I think he said Riedel and Ike in 1994. So, almost 30 years ago. Some people brought up Percy Harvin and Riley Cooper. Riley Cooper didn't play a ton as a freshman at wide receiver, but is this the most excited that we've been about a group of freshman receivers in recent history?
Probably.
Yeah, as a group, yeah. Callaway got off as Paul's as a freshman as well. But as a group, I haven't had any thoughts of maybe these guys. I think at some point, like all these guys going to be very important pieces to wins or to certain drives, special teams, all of that. And I think Pearsall's also a guy that could go on the outside in that way. Because if you're trying to get your best receivers on the field in that regard, and Eugene Wilson is probably going to be one of your most explosive players. Like, I think we can move Pearsall to the outside. I believe I saw that somewhere where he's getting some reps on the outside as well to be able to get a guy like Eugene at the slot. So there's a lot of flexibility, and I'm not scared to put three freshmen out there at those positions. These guys are from Florida. They play big time football already. They play with some of the best competition when it pertains to camps, and they're proving themselves playing against our secondary, which is no slouches out there. So if they could play versus our secondary and our corners, I think they could play versus any secondary in the country. So I just believe in what we got at receiver. And from the veterans, too, I think we're sleeping on Marcus Burke a little bit. I think Burke is going to be very good. I like Caleb Douglas. He just got to shore up his hands and catch some of those balls that he dropped at the Florida State game. He got to bring those in. And we already speak highly of Pearsall. So I think we got a good balance of upperclassmen and freshmen to balance this thing out a little bit.
Yeah, I think that puts the Gators at probably 6 to 7 pretty reliable receivers there, which you're usually only putting 3 on the field at one time. So Florida should, I'm very interested to see the maturation process of Eugene Wilson, Aiden Mizell, and Andy Jean all seem really bought in and all seem like they will get some considerable playing time even early this season. So excited to watch that and watch them, with their speed and space, which is what Florida and Billy Gonzalez have said that they really want out of this group and this next group of wide receivers that they're recruiting as well. Running back seems like we've been tooting this horn for a long time now. The three-headed monster of Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne, and Cam Carroll. Things seem to be going really well still, and it seems like Cam Carroll's still fighting his way to make sure that he gets some snaps this year.
I mean, he's going to get snaps.
Yeah.
There'll be snaps for him. I think Florida's going to run the ball a ton. I thought he was crazy when he got here, but he's earned it. He runs hard. I think he's faster than most people would think at his size. And he's he's the best pass catcher. He's the best pass catcher in that group. And I think the other thing too that maybe we didn't even talk about it in terms of Florida getting Cam. I think one, you need another running. You need the
J5
two.
still alive.
Who?
Breaking up a little bit. J5 short circuit reference. If you
Oh,
ever seen that movie,
You were you were
you
you
broke
were
up a little bit.
hold on. Let me restart this computer and I'll come back.
All right. Nick said Cam Carroll, best pass catching running back out of the group. So excited to see what happens there. Obviously, Montrell Johnson, a guy that did very, very well for Florida last year. Probably a guy that's still a little bit under the radar. Trevor Etienne, obviously very talented, both different type of backs. Trevor Etienne also gets the name recognition of his brother Travis, playing for the Jaguars and obviously doing really well at Clemson there. But Silk, that seems like a solid group, and I'm definitely excited to see how they carry this offense, because I think that them being as good as they hopefully are is going to allow Graham Mertz to not only make some of the short and intermediate throws, but to be able to protect him and maybe even make one of those deep ball passes.
Yeah, I think they're gonna use Cam to wear defenses down in that fourth quarter. If we got a lead, he's a bigger back than the other two, and I think Montreal and they have plenty of size. But when I see any visuals of Cam Carroll, he looks like an NFL SEC running back, and that's a bruiser. We got some different styles. We got some guys that could, got good vision, great feet, and then you just bring a heavier guy in the fourth quarter that's just as good as the front two, the first two, and you're just wearing defenses down. So that's the role I see Cam Carroll in. I love that he can catch the ball out of the backfield. And then, it's less stress and pressure. If one of those guys go down, we worried about, throwing Trey Young Webb out there, a freshman. We got a veteran guy that understands the offense and can keep us, you know, keep the chains moving and keep the offense going, because a lot of it's going to be predicated off of play action football in the run game.
Absolutely. So that group seems to just continue to impress throughout the fall. Excited to see how those snaps shake out, but I definitely think that you'll see more Cam Carroll than we thought when he announced his transfer, but 7-8 months ago to University of Florida. So that group is as good as advertised. We'll wait for Nick to come back where we talk a little bit about more on the offensive line, and we'll probably pause that discussion because we're going to talk a little bit more about it later in the program. But seems like Arlis Boardingham, Dante Zanders, and Odom are your three options there at tight end, but Arlis Boardingham continues to impress, and I think that you're going to see a lot out of him. He's just a little bit different than those guys. Maybe his blocking isn't as sure as an Odom or a Zanders, but it's hard to keep what we've heard off the field, especially the lack of production from tight end last year at Florida.
Yeah, just a playmaker.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear it from, because we're all we started off season and even going into spring football. We're talking about just if the offensive line is healthy and we can run the ball, we'll be okay and play defense. But to start hearing guys like Arlis Boardingham and this group of young wide receivers making plays outside of the run game is just super optimistic and good things to hear from this offense. Being able to hit the running back throws. Some of the tight end intermediate throws, I think it's just going to make our offense click a little better this year. I don't think Graham Mertz is a better quarterback than or skill set, I would say, or ceiling is higher than Anthony Richardson. But some of the small things that we need to do just to be a successful offense, like hitting intermediate throws, being able to throw a slant that's not too hot, being able to hit swing passes, whatever it may be, it's going to make us an overall better team. My biggest concern right now, I think Arlis Boardingham is going to be real good. The drop off from him as a there is a drop off from him to the other guys as far as playmaking abilities. I like Odom. He can block well. He could be a reliable catcher, but getting open may be not his strength. So there is a drop off. We need Arlis Boardingham to stay healthy, and we also need the offensive line to stay as healthy as possible. If these guys stay healthy, like 8 wins, 9 wins is not far fetched whatsoever. It's just all about health at this point.
Absolutely.